Tuesday, December 10th, 2013, and you're listening to SYN Boldly, the podcast, the Sign Your Name Project. I'm your host, Trey Comstock. With me this week is the ever-punchy Kathleen Royston.
Hey!
And the ever-energetic Stephen Doss.
Hello.
Tonight, we are all about the war on Christmas, cakes for gay weddings, and the powerful witness of transformation found in the life of Nelson Mandela. However, we start tonight with war in the news. So it's officially the most wonderful time of the year. Some may see that as the beginning of Advent and the hope for not just a new year, but a Savior's birth in the world. Some may see it as a chance to hotly anticipate the latest tech gadgets to be underneath their Christmas tree and the eschaton that is the arrival of an Xbox One or a PS4. However, no, we are talking about truly the most wonderful time of the year, the war on Christmas. Yes, American Christians have been persecuted for decades now in the never-ending pushback that is the war on Christmas.
I lost both legs in the war on Christmas.
I lost all hope in the war on Christmas. Apparently, the utterance of happy holidays, the inclusion of holiday trees, holiday festivals, holiday wreaths, and holiday parties somehow constitutes Christian persecution to many Christians in America. It's not often I so openly mock things that other people believe, but quite frankly, when I look at the state of persecution of Christianity across the globe and throughout history, the utterance of happy holidays in a pluralist society that even Christians celebrate multiple holidays during the season seems quite frankly ridiculous. So we're going to run down the top 5 myths as selected by Salon.com the 6 top myths and conspiracy theories related to the imaginary war on Christmas. I'll do it in reverse order. Coming in at number 6. Whoa, I can't talk. Clerks in stores have been ordered to say Happy Holidays, and store flyers and catalogs no longer mention the word Christmas. Some folks do use the words Happy Holidays. However, this has more to do with the fact that, hey, there are more holidays. So how do y'all feel about the use of the phrase Happy Holidays? We'll talk about them each one at a time very briefly.
Well, first of all, why do you hate Jesus by using Happy Holidays? It's just... This always, gets my goose, to use the colloquialism of the 1940s.
It roasts your goose?
It roasts my goose.
It's the biggest goose I've ever seen.
Oh my. Anywho, it's because, it's a holiday, and you're still taking time out to say, hey, happy holidays. Whatever holiday you celebrate, whether it's Christmas, Hanukkah,
Festivus,
Kwanzaa,
New Year's, Hogmanay,
a tip-top tet, whatever you decide to celebrate, you're still, going out to say something nice. Happy holidays. I genuinely wish you a happy holidays. You don't specify it because,
no,
I don't know
it's Merry Christmas.
What if the person I say Merry Christmas to is Jewish?
Or Muslim.
Or
atheist.
Hindu or atheist. It's the time, Christmas is the time when everyone, no matter what your religion, comes together to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Because
sure,
that's what it is, right?
Yeah. Kathleen?
I'm just going to put this out here. Ready? I'm going to blow your mind. Holiday. Holy day. Christmas is a holy day.
It's a feast day. One of several connected with the Advent season.
Furthermore, the celebration of Christmas is a relatively recent introduction, and it used to be Epiphany was the big day. So there's that. So we should really be saying it should not be the war on Christmas, it should be the war on Epiphany. Which
we've already lost.
Yes.
We have lost the war on Epiphany.
So there's that. That is all.
So the song should be Epiphany Shoes.
Anything. So moving down to... No. We can't afford the royalties, Stephen. That's my reasoning, and I'm sticking to it. Number 5. Cities and towns can't decorate for Christmas because someone will be offended.
But have you seen, like, Atlanta
every town
and every town ever?
Right. So they all do it, and they just call it something slightly more pluralist, but it's still playing into the Christian normative nature of politics in this country.
I loved seeing Santa Claus, that token, Saint
Nicolas, whose saints day already occurred.
who he was the one that punched heretics, right?
Yeah, he did punch heretics.
Here's what's in my bag, son. The fist. Boo.
He's my favorite.
Number 4. You can't use the term Christmas tree anymore or display them in public, except for the National Christmas Tree and the really big Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center.
Yep. Those are
holiday shrubs.
But they're not. They are not even referred to as the national holiday shrub. I don't even think it's the national holiday tree. I really think it's just the national.
It's the national Christmas tree. It's It's Christmas in Rockefeller Center. It's all that stuff. Mariah Carey's still gonna sing "Merry Christmas" to you.
Merry Christmas.
All I want for Christmas is you.
Also, let's be clear: trees have got nothing to do with Jesus and everything to do with Germans. So. Not that I dislike Germans and only love Jesus, but I don't really care what you call the stupid thing. It's a dead pine that lives in your living room.
And makes the cat sneeze in my case.
Yes.
I think that what I hear in a lot of this is the idea that recognizing the pluralistic reality in which we live is somehow the same thing as oppression.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men were created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Like a Christmas tree!
Like among these include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Christmas trees!
Pursuit of happiness for all!
Well, listen,
Stop
ladies
oppressing
and
me,
fellas. Let's be honest. They're talking about one specific God. And in that thing, and so we should just go in line because as
they're talking about nature and nature's
the
God,
Christian,
the
Christian founding fathers.
Were
some of them, some of them were Christians. Madison and Adams in particular. Mostly the main writers were deists. If you read Jefferson's Bible, you want to know what he did? He took out all of the miracles.
Yes, he did.
I have a copy of it there on my shelf. It's a really cool book. I think I do. Maybe it got moved to Tunnel Hill.
That's not Bart. That's different.
Is this it?
Yes.
George Shrinks
by William Joyce. Yes. I was once a child. Few believe this. I seldom believe it, but I was once a child.
Focus.
Back to Christmas.
Focus, y'all.
Number 3. This is possibly my favorite.
Oh, yay.
Special laws are needed because it's illegal to say Merry Christmas. First of all...
I have been arrested twice today.
I got pulled over by a cop, but not for saying Merry Christmas. The cop was thinking I was having quite too of a Merry Christmas, which was untrue. Texas recently passed a law defending the right to say Merry Christmas, which is, by the way, covered under the First Amendment.
Which has never been taken away.
Which has never been taken away. Also, I think you could sue a store for telling its clerks that they have to say Merry Christmas, have to say Happy Holidays.
Yeah.
Most choose to because it's quite simply more appropriate in America.
Yeah.
America.
That is worth the royalties.
As long as we don't do 30 seconds, we're fine. Number 2, public schools can't recognize Christmas anymore. No, they can't decorate explicitly for a religious holiday, but they can blend religious and secular understandings of Christmas. For instance, you can teach the Christmas traditions or sing religious songs in conjunction with secular songs at your holiday concert.
Yep.
But you can't perform the Christmas pageant at school anymore, and we're all the better for it. Because
let's be honest, those child actors are horrible.
And no 13-year-old girl wants to play Mary as opposed to Joseph with the pimply guy that can actually learn his lines and hold a baby.
Not to mention, the wise men do not show up until Epiphany. I'm telling you, what we need to be fighting is the war on Epiphany.
We have lost that war. We can only draw the line at Christmas now. We've given up that battle. But if not now, when? And if not us, who? And the number one conspiracy theory about Christmas, as selected by Salon.com, is public schools have banned the colors red and green. This one is entirely mythical. It's only possible under gang prevention things, which I guess first century Christians were somewhat like a gang. But in 21st century America, good luck banning both the colors red and green for an entire 2 months of the year. And with that, I throw it to Stephen.
Oh, Sydney has something.
Has something to share.
You laugh, but people at your very church, Trey Comstock, were talking about this on Sunday.
Oh.
That doesn't... What did I didn't hear that.
Green specifically.
That is patently... They may be true that they're talking about. I don't know. It is, in fact, bunk. Sometimes schools do ban colors, but it has nothing to do with religious holidays and everything to do with gang prevention. Kathleen Royston.
I think what I love best about these is that the idea of a war on a faith is all about secular traditions.
Yes.
Indeed it is.
Like, y'all,
You
red
just-
and green is like the baby Jesus colors. Like, y'all, that's not in the... Never mind.
It's not in anywhere. Anyways, purple. It would be, if you want the real...
Or blue.
Purple or blue.
Or white.
I happen to have purple vestments. That's what I've got. And so we have decorated in purple and white this year. With, of course, green, which comes from the trees, which comes from the Germans.
God. Also,
And-
the trees come from God.
Well, they do come from God, but the tradition of hanging trees
Is it
originally
German?
upside down came from the Germans' desire to burn down their house.
Tannenbaum.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great. That one's royalty free.
That's public domain.
That is exactly. It's royalty free. It's public domain. We can sing "O Tannenbaum" till the cows come home. But
Where's your cows?
the cows have done come home, which brings us to our next story. Stephen Doss.
Oh, yes. And continuing our theme of oppression of Christians,
Ooh, my favorite.
we are going
I love the oppression.
Yeah.
we are going to Colorado. So, in Colorado, there's a baker, and a couple decides to go to the baker to
Is
get
there
their...
a butcher and a candlestick maker?
I'm sorry. I'm the couple's smooching.
Anywho, so this couple goes to the baker and asks for a wedding cake. The baker says, I can't do it, because the couple was a same-sex couple.
That's not very good in the Christmas spirit.
I know. Maybe there was someone in front of him who needed some shoes. Anywho, the baker says, I'm more than happy to tell you where you can go, but I can't do this for religious beliefs.
So he told them where to go and how to get there.
Yes, the other baker. Nothing more, nothing less. So
I appreciated that.
the couple basically sues the baker for not making their wedding cake, and the court in Colorado has said that this baker has to make them a wedding cake. My question is this. How do we take something like that where someone has, and let's be honest, I don't know the baker, but this could be like a super genuine religious belief
Oh,
where
then let's
he's not homophobic, but he's just like, no, you guys are great, but yeah, let's assume the best.
Let's assume
Best of intentions.
That he's like, I know plenty of pastors and Christians who in good conscience believe in a way other than I do.
Yeah.
And I hate when we even stray to this sometimes, and we try to stop ourselves, but it happens.
We try to call ourselves out,
But
sometimes
we don't want everyone to stray into the fact that there isn't a faithful way to believe that. I patently disagree, and we can talk about it and passionately till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But I don't.
There they are.
But I don't want to preclude that isn't a way to read the Bible in a faithful way. I mean, quite honestly, to be perfectly serious, I think he has every right to decide who his business serves and who they don't.
Right.
And that's, I disagree with the stance he has taken. But I respect his right. He should have the right to take that stance in that all businesses
reserve the right to deny service to anyone.
And
in a legal way, like, because you could take that to the nth degree and say, well, that's just what they were doing with separate but equal and segregation.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
that is exactly what they were doing.
Yeah,
but that was also legally protected. And there's a whole lot of other weird things that happen with it, but it is the same justification that's used there. I get really itchy when it's telling a religious institution you must do, or a religious institution or person, you must do this thing against your conscience. It gets sticky around the healthcare debate as well. with the provision of birth control.
Yeah.
I come down on a different side there because I see that as not actually a decision between the business. The rates don't change. It's just what's in the plan, and so that's actually just a conversation between a woman and her doctor.
Yeah.
And the doctor can refuse to provide the woman birth control if he so chooses. That would be that would be breaking a lot of oaths, but he could do it. But I think to a certain extent, this guy should be able to turn folks down. Do I think he should have turned folks down? Heck no.
No, business is business.
Business is business, and I think that's bad. I mean, I still think that's bad theology.
Yeah.
Even if you disagree with gay marriage, I think that's bad theology. But I have a hard time saying that a court should be able to overturn his poor business decisions.
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's, the sort of theological issues versus legal ones.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be one of those times, I agree with you, this might be one of those times where it's a theological issue and not a business issue. Do I think that is the right decision theologically, morally, however you want to say that? No. But legally?
I mean, it's you can argue, and clearly they did successfully, that it's discrimination.
Yeah.
Yes, it is discrimination. Now, how much, what I don't know, and I'm not a legal scholar, both Stephen and I have worked in legal offices 4 times.
Yes.
But neither of
Mortgage law.
I was a judge's clerk. So, neither of us have law degrees, but we have certain interface with the law.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know the extent to which it's business decision versus discrimination.
Yeah.
I think like we've all said, theologically this is piss poor.
Yeah.
But business wise, I think it's bad business. I think it sets a bad precedent.
Yeah.
But this may go down in appeals.
Yeah, I think it will too, because there's still a mentality that some people have that it is a choice. Do I believe that? No, I don't. I'm going to out myself as someone who doesn't believe that way. And hey, how's it going? Oh. Well, hey there. Nice to meet you.
That's better.
But I mean, certain people do think that it's a choice and that it can be helped, I guess. And
sure.
And you have that implication to say, like, this is enabling you making your bad decision, which is to love someone unequivocally and unconditionally, which is evil and wrong, apparently.
Right, and it also makes you wonder how you ever resolve this in any kind of legal or theological framework.
And I don't think you can in a legal standpoint, unless there is unequivocal 100% proof that certain people are going to be born this way no matter what.
Yeah, but science doesn't work like that.
I know.
Science is a game of probabilities.
Yeah.
When Einstein says God doesn't play dice, I think he's a little full of it in that, most...
Mm-hmm.
At least most science, to a certain extent, is based on a range of probabilities.
Yeah.
Which, anyways, where this goes for us, I think, is say it was a church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There we go. That's where I was leading to.
Let's throw this in the ecclesial arena. Bad business, possibly discrimination. I can start to see why the court ruled that way. I feel a little weird about that level of intrusion, telling a man who he can and cannot sell to. That seems a little weird. If it was life-saving medical service, of course,
yeah, I think there's an emergency protocol that comes into effect.
Right. But this is not. We don't have a right to wedding cakes, and unfortunately, I think that would be wonderful. We don't. And so I feel weird. But I think from an ecclesial perspective, what if it was a church that sent away this gay couple from attending? What then? Does that change our perspective?
Well, I mean, if it was... that's a tricky one, because, you want to say that, oh yeah, everyone's more than welcome in my church, and when they want to do a wedding, they're more than welcome to come in. But most Christian denominations in this country will say, no, you can't come here.
Well, I mean, we Methodists, it's quite literally in our book of discipline that we can't hold.
Yeah.
We can't hold a gay wedding.
Catholic churches can't do it. I think what are the only churches that the UCC, ELCA, and Episcopals?
Episcopals. Can PCUSA?
I don't know.
If you're PCUSA and you're listening, email us and let us know.
Emily, that's you.
Don't call out our listeners by name, Daniel Fullerton. But, it's a majority of churches, probably a majority of other houses of worship won't allow it. And it's a shame because everyone should be welcome to celebrate in the house of the Lord. I firmly believe that. But it's just not in the cards right now.
Okay, so
and I think that's when you get into basically that's that establishment clause in the First Amendment saying we can't.
Well, right, and
government
the
can't
government
force the religion to do anything,
and I don't want them to. I mean,
right.
I don't want there to be an act of Congress, and that wouldn't stand, because that wouldn't stand. But my question, okay, let me drill this down further.
Okay,
what about membership in the church?
Well, we had a judicial decision about that in the Methodist Church that says you can deny membership to anyone if you have just cause, and that just cause can be anything you decide, apparently.
Is that theologically sound?
Nope, not at all.
Explicate that for me.
Well, let's look at who that wonderful man named Jesus Christ sat with. Did he sit with the people that were perfectly okay and normal?
What for?
No. No. I used air quotes for people listening because no one's normal. Let's just be honest with ourselves. But certain people are established as these are the people we want to hang out with. They're the wealthy. They're the people in power.
Not even just the people who that culture have considered normative.
Yeah.
I quote the United Methodist Eucharistic prayer. Are you ready?
Yeah.
He fed the hungry, healed the sick, and ate with sinners.
Yep.
Right. And I mean, this is predicated on the assumption that the people involved in these decisions believe that homosexuality is a sin, which we do not.
We do not know.
No.
I want to, as we're using language of the sick and
we do not believe.
We do not believe that.
Yeah.
There are certain people in this world who are born sick and born sinful. That's just icky. Yeah, but I mean,
that's great theology. That's just icky.
Well, I mean, that's that's what it is, and it's Christ who sat with them, and if we want to be the body of Christ on earth, our doors have to be open to. I hate using these terms, but the undesirables.
Well, they just have to be open to everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That there is no such thing.
Oh, and they are open to everyone if you can. If you're someone, if you can agree to
play by our rules.
I think what I get most out of the Gospels is get over yourself.
Yep.
That's the sort of prevailing message, I think, is to get over yourself. And also get over, Christians need to get over our need to be right.
Yeah.
All the time. 'Cause that's not really what we're supposed to be doing. So, there. Let everybody in. Open doors, y'all.
Take that, society. Bam.
And on that note, that brings us to this week's discussion. So last week, the world suffered a tremendous loss. Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. Nelson Mandela, of course, famous for his work in ending apartheid in South Africa, which had him jailed for a good chunk of his life.
27 years.
27 years. So nearly a quarter of his life, or more than a quarter of his life. He was in prison for the cause of ending one of the most extreme forms of segregation the modern world has ever known. He went on to be the president of South Africa in what has been marked as a major turning point certainly in South African history, an example to the world of times when justice, hope, and reconciliation can prevail. So we wanted to spend some time this week talking about this idea, particularly of reconciliation. There was great harm done for generations to the South Africans of African origin, in particular, black South Africans. as they self-identify. And yet there was some tension. I mean, I'm not going to whitewash this. I spent a good chunk of my senior year in undergrad studying this stuff. There wasn't without its tensions, but the country has been able to find a peace through a intentional process of reconciliation, what gets called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or the TRC, because everything needs an acronym. And of course, reconciliation is a very Christian, or at least a very theological term. We talk about, being reconciled to God and reconciled in Christ and reconciled to each other. And so I want to know y'all's thoughts on reconciliation and our hope for reconciliation within our own church, within our own time. Somebody.
I heard, and this is more about Mandela than it is about this question, but I heard something on the radio that really stuck with me this morning. Someone on the AM station that I love was interviewing someone who'd written a book about Mandela and said when he was in prison, he learned Afrikaans. So he could speak to people in their own language. That was he learned the language of the oppressor, and that this later was really helpful. That stuck with me. There was something really powerful about that. I didn't know that. And what does it mean in reconciliation to learn the language of your oppressor?
Yeah, I mean that is because the words have power.
Yeah,
and to be able to speak to that power in a multilingual society. But also to understand someone's language in part is to start to understand them.
Absolutely.
right.
Because to understand how someone talks is intimately related
Absolutely.
to how someone thinks and how someone understands and sees the world. You learn a lot about a culture from studying its language. It's one of the things that makes linguistics a fascinating field. The number of words that the various Romance languages derived from Latin have for both love and war, for acts of love and acts of fighting, says a lot about Roman culture that kind of this came from. English bears a lot of the marks of our cultural history. For instance, what we consider, this is one of my favorite factoids, what we consider swear words, curses, aren't actually curses. They're just the Germanic words for things, rather than the Latin-based French words for things. So you have the F word versus copulation. Or you have the S word versus excrement. Excrement is, comes from Latin, and good old Scottish swearing comes from the more Germanic languages. That doesn't bear the marks in our language of our history. And so I think it is part of that process of reconciliation to be able to see the world through the other person's eyes and turn them from the other into your fellow being is understanding how they think. And how they think is intimately related to how they talk.
And I have to wonder if this is exactly what reconciliation in Christ is like. That what does it mean when the eternal divine becomes flesh and speaks our language? I mean, I think that that's a really powerful kind of image, and that this reconciliation is not, it's bottom up, it's not top down. And I think that's really powerful.
But also, there's a lot of hope for me in the process that happened in South Africa, right? Because people were quite literally killed over apartheid, in apartheid. Systematically oppressed, starved to death. I mean, this is a tremendous human rights abuse on a widespread, nationwide scale. And yet, it ended with minimal violence. And South Africa has remained a relatively multiracial, multi-ethnic culture, including white South Africans, in spite of what happened. And that came about partly through this process of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where you have the oppressors come, confess their crimes in front of witnesses, often in front of the people that they deliberately hurt, and allowing that to be part of a healing process. That this truth and speaking truth on both sides allowed for healing. That takes a tremendous strength in leadership that I think we see in Mandela. He gets equated to George Washington in a lot of ways, not all the ways, but he's the revolutionary leader that became the good first president. And just as we have in our history, Washington hands over a sword to Congress. Washington could have charged on, become king, and we would have been a monarchy. And people would have gone along with that, probably. But he didn't do it. He handed over his sword. And he allowed for a democratic process. Nelson Mandela could have started purges. And they probably would have been successful, because there's a lot of anger. A lot of anger. And instead, he went along with folks like Bishop Tutu. And Archbishop Tutu. And allowed for this process of truth and reconciliation, and allowed that to have weight, to try and heal the country and bring them together. And that's a tremendously powerful act, because the power for vengeance is, the desire for vengeance, I think, is often very strong.
And that was there at the beginning of Mandela's life. If you read about him, he was, there's a reason he was on the terrorist watch list.
Yeah. And why Dick Cheney voted to keep him there.
Exactly. The things he did were...
Well, the things, not just him, but the ANC did.
That he was the leader of. We're often questionable, yes. And then, there's some reconciliation there, too, to come to terms with, maybe this isn't the right way.
Right.
Maybe this isn't the way that I can get the most.
But I think in that act of reconciliation is the confession that in conflicts very seldom is there a right side.
Exactly.
A complete
right side.
Let me rephrase this. A completely right side and a completely wrong side.
Yeah.
Reconciliation involves humility on both sides.
On both parts.
And I think that's something that we have in this legacy of Mandela is no. Is he perfect? No.
No.
No
one's perfect.
No one's perfect. And certainly some awful things happened under his direction.
Right.
The scale, we can argue scale all day long.
Exactly.
But it doesn't necessarily matter. Because at least all sins are equal in the eyes of God. Certainly not in the eyes of the UN Commission on Human Rights, but in the eyes of God.
Yes.
So there is that kind of humility of that I did something wrong, you did something wrong. Let us move on together.
Yes.
That's difficult and humbling.
I also think, and I probably shouldn't be talking about this because I need to do some more research, but I'm going to anyway. So if I get things wrong, forgive me.
That hasn't stopped us ever before.
My
fact-checking ruins podcast.
My area of research in undergrad was the military dictatorships in the southern cone of South America. And Chile had a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and Argentina had trials of the generals who were in charge, and there were awful human rights violations, torture, kidnappings, disappearances. I mean, really, really, really awful things. And I think that the desire for justice and reconciliation, how do you balance those two? How do you thank you, Kat. How do we decide that what helps families of victims is reconciliation over justice? And I think that can be a really, really difficult balance to strike. And And I'm not sure. I mean, I think I look at it differently now since I have spent as much time in theology as I have. But I also have to wonder if on the ground, if this reconciliation is the most healing thing for people who have suffered.
I think this is also just tricky for us to talk about.
Yes,
Because I can
Yeah.
issue you 1,000 theological reasons why restorative
Right.
reconciliation,
Right.
which is itself a form of justice, is better, more biblical, more explicitly, certainly more in line with the teachings of Christ than punitive justice.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I have not suffered this level of tragedy, and so it is very easy for me to say this, not as the victim of a human rights abuse.
Right. Because we are on the outside looking in, and we don't have the same context, and
So
hopefully we never will. Let's just be honest with ourselves. And so we can't ever know what would be best
Absolutely.
for.
right, and it seems somewhat just insensitive to offer up a strong argument.
Yeah.
In this case, I certainly probably have. You can dig through my college record of papers, and I probably have. But I think it is insensitive because I can say no. I mean, there shouldn't be punitive justice that just ends up begetting violence. Simply begets more violence.
Mm-hmm.
And if South Africa had trials, I argue it probably would have ripped the nation apart.
Yeah.
But I don't want to diminish the pain that's felt by those who have been directly affected and their cry for justice.
Right.
You still have mothers of los desaparecidos who stand with signs demanding justice that they may never get.
Well, and in Argentina, several of the generals were like living in posh neighborhoods and like so is reconciliation just sweeping things under the rug? I mean, and that's and what does that actually look like? I think it's just complicated.
But you look at the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah.
Which is another example where we went the punitive direction, but only for the leadership.
Right.
Generally speaking.
Right. And that's what Argentina
it's only for the leadership. You leave the rank and file out of it because if you start going after the rank and file, what do you have left? And you wonder, do people feel better because of Nuremberg? I mean, I don't know. Mm-hmm. When I read about Nuremberg and the things that the people who got away and people slipped through the cracks and there were some folks who went to jail for a very long time, but when you're responsible for the killing of 12 million people, you go to jail for a long time? What do you even do with that?
Right.
How do you how is there an earthly punishment for that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, I guess, try, but there's a comedian, Eddie Izzard, who I really like, and I find him really funny, and he talks about mass murder. Very funny subject. But he talks, you murder someone, and we're like, oh, bad person, lock him away. You murdered 5 million people? Oh, you must get up early. There's this concept of, we kind of don't know what to do with those who are responsible for mass murder because the scale of the tragedy that they have committed is just beyond anything we can comprehend.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do if we lock you away for one lifetime for one murder? What do you do when you're responsible for 12 million murders? Or you're Stalin and it's 65 million murders. What do you do? How can there be any sort of retributive justice that makes any sense? The only thing, this I think is why hell is a very functional concept sometimes, because death is one and done, and you start to understand why people feel the need for that eternal punishment when you start to think of the scale of tragedy that some people have invoked in the world. I mean, I'm not really making an argument for the existence of hell. I just understand rhetorically how you get there sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because, and so to me, sometimes in the scale of that tragedy, reconciliation is the only way to process it.
Mm-hmm.
That there is confession. And, maybe those who are absolutely at the top, number one, gave the orders responsible, maybe they go to the Human Rights Court in The Hague. Mm-hmm. Maybe we have, this world has at least a court for processing these kind of cases. But for those who are the functionaries within it, how do you balance that? And I think what heals countries is reconciliation. Yeah. But that's my opinion as someone who is not in the situation to need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Well, and sort of countries versus individuals. I think that the communal understanding of what's healing and individuals, I think that is something to be taken into mind as well. So
as ever, this is not something that we are going to resolve tonight at 11:30. So on that note, it is time to end. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's SYN Boldly. We will be back next week with another action-packed episode. If you have any feedback, you want to call us out for being full of it, you want to call us out for the real war on Christmas, we may laugh at you, but feel free to comment. I'm just kidding. We won't laugh at you.
We might.
SYN Boldly at nfear.org. Facebook.com/the Sign Your Name Project and at SYN Boldly on Twitter. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord and end fear by signing your name. Good night.
There he goes.